I'd have no hesitation in recommending GRAF. The support has been great. I mean, one of the things I did early on was look at cost comparisons, and from what I can see, GRAF were very competitive on pricing. And when you add in the support that they've given us, I would say it's very, very good value for money. Hi, my name is Peter Lohman. We moved to North Yorkshire from London 4 years ago, and about to talk to you about our project. We lived in London for over 40 years. During the COVID times, we thought we should move out of London. It was a very hectic time for buying houses, probably in short supply, and we came and looked at Nineveh Farm and liked the look of it. Obviously, we were successful in buying the house. So we have a farmhouse that was built early 1800s. There's a stone barn attached to it. The farmer that owned it for a number of years built 2 cow sheds. So our objective is to build a passive house for ourselves. So we started to think about what we would do with this. And we've never built a house for ourselves before. And we thought, well, this is a really good opportunity to build something that we want in the way that we want. We started to think about the project and think about the parameters. The first focus was actually on the cow sheds themselves. We decided to go for a timber-framed approach, discounted SIPs because of the slightly odd nature of the concrete pad that we were working on. So the main contractor has built the frame for us. To us, that's part of the sustainability because we have a highly insulated house. The energy that we'll require to input into it will be very low, but we are going to install an air source heat pump. We will have a mechanical ventilation heat recovery system, and at the end of the project we are intending to install solar panels on one of the roofs of the cow shed, and we will also be installing a small wind turbine. As much as we can, we want to generate our own electricity. So sustainability is a big thing for us. What we've noticed is the change in the climate. For the first time, the first time in our 4 years here, we had a period of 2 to 3 months where we had very, very little water. And trying to maintain watering out on the garden in the field was a real challenge, walking across with watering cans. Also, the reason for looking at a rainwater harvesting tank was to provide ourselves with water for the garden. So we have a 22,000 litre tank, which when it does rain in Yorkshire, that will fill up quite quickly. So we should have a plentiful supply of water to water the garden with. The other thing, we had a meeting with the planning authority locally, and biodiversity and sustainability were quite a big thing as far as they were concerned. And we talked about putting a rainwater harvesting tank in, and they said, well, that's going to give you a lot of brownie points. The arrangements for foul water at the moment are pretty primitive and certainly wouldn't pass muster with the Environment Agency. So we started to look around for a solution, and we decided on a sewage treatment plant. The next thing we had to think about is, where do we get this from? Because in all our years, we've never ever bought this type of system. So probably like many people, I did a Google search, and quite a few companies came up in terms of being able to supply the sort of equipment that we wanted. I sort of narrowed it down to about 8 companies and looked in some depth at them, narrowed it down to 2 after that to do some in-depth research. And obviously GRAF was one of those companies that was narrowed down. We have a drainage engineer working with us, so I sat down with him and talked it through with him. And basically, he has no link with GRAF, but his recommendation was the GRAF system. So that's how we, if you like, started to enter into conversation with GRAF early on. My contact there was Steve Wrighton, and the nice thing about it is Steve has been my contact throughout the whole process. So I haven't had to sort of explain things to another person. In the early stages, it was really about understanding what we were getting into. And Steve explained to us very simply, what the rainwater harvesting tank would do, and more importantly, the sewage treatment plant. The first thing was, what size do we need? So GRAF did all the calculations for us and calculated that we needed a 22,000 litre rainwater harvesting tank, which sounds very, very big, but now it's in the ground. I'm very happy. And I think we will have use for that amount of water on the gardens. Again, they did the same similar calculations to determine what size sewage treatment plant we wanted. And we have a sewage treatment plant that will cope with 15 people on site. It was a bit mind-boggling, never having had to experience anything like this before. As I said, we had very, very good support from GRAF, which was very, very good, and talked about what we wanted. I mean, it's really interesting. You look at these things on a website and you think, oh, that looks okay. When they actually arrived on site, they actually look massive. And we were thinking, well, how on earth are we going to get these into the ground? How are we going to move them? Anyway, we found a very, very good contractor who had a very, very big digger. He dug a very nice big hole for us and was able to move the tanks around and put them in the ground to us. All along, GRAF have been there for us. If we had questions, there was always someone to talk to, and the support has been first class. I couldn't not say anything different. I'd have no hesitation in recommending GRAF to a person or people entering into a similar type of product. The support has been great. I mean, one of the things I did early on was look at cost comparisons, and from what I can see, GRAF were very competitive on pricing. And when you add in the support that they've given us, I would say it's very, very good value for money. Right at the outset, to me, what's really important is to appoint the right architect. I think from that perspective, what's also very important, a number of people that I interviewed, architects that I interviewed, were very happy to do all the drawings for you, get you through planning, but then didn't want to know anything about the project. So the architect that we have, I would say she's also a technical designer as well. So she's been on site with us, she's put drawings together for the builder. Also, that really, really helped with the building inspector, because he could look at the drawings and say, yeah, that's fine, or no, it's not. So architect is very, very important. Your main contractor is also very, very important. We were very lucky in that the person that we appointed had refurbished our daughter's restaurant, so we'd worked alongside him for a couple of years, so we knew him well. I would also recommend appointing a planning consultant. I know it's an extra spend, but the advice they can give is very, very helpful. And I think, although it was a bit nerve-wracking, the planning process, looking back on it, it actually went very, very smoothly. And that's because our planning consultant knew the process, knew the, if you like, the buttons to press, the planners were looking for. So that's early on. I think when you start to get into the project, it's about putting together a schedule of works. Now, you don't need a schedule of works for the whole project. That's almost impossible to do. But we do it every 2 months. We sit down with the builder and the architect, and we look at the next 2 months and what things are we going to be doing. When do we need other trades to come in? That sort of thing. So if you're thinking about a rainwater harvesting tank, you might be saying to yourself, well, do we really need one? I think there were two big things for us why we did it. Firstly was when we had our meeting with, our pre-app meeting with the planner, we got a big hint that biodiversity was really important, and also putting a rainwater harvesting tank in would give us a lot of brownie points. And then really a practical reason, we were looking at the weather trends. Yorkshire normally is a very wet county. We've just had 3 months with virtually no rain. So to have a tank with 22,000 litres of water in it during that period would have been really, really valuable.